Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Irina Vaderman, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. Thank you all for being here today. This morning, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights filed a lawsuit against CSL Plasma for violating the Minnesota Human Rights Act by discriminating against a transgender woman by the name of Alice James. The lawsuit details how the Plasma Collection Center unlawfully denied Alice James from donating her plasma solely because of her gender identity. The lawsuit was filed in Minnesota's 4th Judicial District Court in Hennepin County. We are pleased to be here today with Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, whose office is representing the Department of Human Rights in this case and will be speaking with you all shortly. We are publicly announcing this lawsuit today because we want all Minnesotans to know that we stand together against all forms of discrimination, including discrimination against members of the transgender community. Since 1993, the Minnesota Human Rights Act has protected Minnesotans from discrimination on the basis of gender identity. The way the statute is currently written is not ideal. It was written over 25 years ago, and we've learned a lot since then. But nonetheless, our state strictly prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender identity and led the nation by including this provision in the statute. We are breathing life into that provision today. At the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, our agency is committed to ensuring that the civil rights of all Minnesotans, including transgender and gender nonconforming individuals, are protected. Our work is rooted in the goal of building a strong and thriving Minnesota so that everyone can live joyful and successful lives free of discrimination. This lawsuit exemplifies our commitment to this work and seeks to prevent future discrimination. This work would not be possible without our fantastic staff who are equally committed to these issues. And in fact, some of those folks are here today, so thank you to you all. I'd like to share some details about the case with everyone here today as well. In 2011, Alice James began donating plasma at the CSL Plasma Donation Center in Duluth. Although she is a woman, the center required that she identify as a male on the intake form because of her assigned sex at birth. And as she continued to donate plasma, she began marking female on the intake form consistent with her gender identity. Then in June 2015, a nurse informed Ms. James that CSL Plasma did not permit transgender people to donate plasma and prohibited her from donating. In fact, CSL Plasma admitted that it has a flat ban on transgender donors. In February 2016, Ms. James filed a charge of discrimination with the Department of Human Rights, and the department completed an investigation of the allegations, as we do with all charges of discrimination. In November 2017, the department found probable cause that CSL Plasma discriminated against Ms. James. With all of our probable cause determinations, the department offers a conciliation process for the parties to engage in order to settle and address the dispute and make policy or procedural changes to prevent further discrimination and violations of the Minnesota Human Rights Act. CSL Plasma refused to even engage in the conciliation process. After a probable cause determination was rendered and CSL Plasma refused to conciliate, it continued to discriminate against Ms. James. In October of 2018, CSL Plasma again denied her the ability to donate plasma, but this time at its donation center in Minneapolis. Living a life free of discrimination is every Minnesotan's civil right under the Minnesota Human Rights Act. We are working closely with the Attorney General to ensure that Ms. James' rights are protected and to prevent future discrimination of all kinds, including discrimination on the basis of race, disability, and sex. We are very pleased to be working in partnership and deepening our relationship with the Attorney General's office on this significant case. I'll turn it over to Attorney General Keith Ellison now.
Thank you. Well, let me say welcome to the Minnesota Attorney General's office, and let me start by thanking the staff at the Minnesota Human Rights Department. You all ensure we have one Minnesota every day. If people don't thank you enough, let me thank you, and let me thank your work, particularly on this case. Because no one walking through this state, hoping to live a life as full as anyone else, should be expected to live a lesser life simply because of who they are. And transgender members of our community are fully fleshed, equal members of our society, and we're going to stand up against anyone who tries to deny that. And so thank you all for this tremendous work, and we're glad to be with you in this effort and to work side by side as your counsel. The Minnesota Human Rights Act protects all Minnesotans from discrimination. A life free from discrimination is ever what we're seeking. The Minnesota Department of Human Rights, our agency, is committed to ensuring that civil rights of all Minnesotans, including transgender and gender non-conforming people, is protected. This lawsuit exemplifies our commitment to this work and seeks to prevent future discrimination, which is why we're having a press conference. We don't want to just do justice. We have to be publicly doing it to signal to the country, to the state, that human rights, equal rights are what we're all about, so that we can protect the next person from being a victim of discrimination. I'm proud to be working with my colleagues at the Department of Human Rights and very proud of the leadership offered at the Department of Human Rights. And we believe that, that since our state, among the first in this country, since 1993, Minnesota became the first state in the nation to outlaw gender identity discrimination. We have an important legacy to uphold, and while we have important protections under the Human Rights Act, we're leading the nation in those protections. This case represents that there's more work to be done and that we're going to be vigilant in doing it. So with that, thank you very much, and we're ready for questions.
Are these folks with you, Mr. Attorney General, are they part of the case? Or?
They're employees of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, and they all contribute to make human rights real for everyone, so they're here today.
Is there any evidence that other transgender men and women have been discriminated in such a fashion?
You know what, I'll hand that one over to the Department of Human Rights.
Yeah, thank you. So the department has received 16 charges of discrimination from 2016 to today from transgender folks, and that is outlining discrimination that they've experienced in the business setting, public accommodations, public services, education. It spans all of those contexts. And specifically, CSL Plasma, there have been 4 charges of discrimination, at least 4 charges that I know of, that have been filed with the Department of Human Rights against that entity.
For the same thing?
Yes, for discrimination on the basis of gender identity.
And can you say how much are the damages? Obviously, you're suing for damages on behalf of Ms. James. How much are you asking for?
So our role as the Minnesota Department of Human Rights is to seek that systemic change, to make those policy and procedural changes to ensure that not only is Ms. James not discriminated against, but that other transgender folks don't experience discrimination. Ms. James is represented by her own counsel, and I would address any questions to him.
Are there 4 total or 4 additional in addition to Ms. James?
In addition.
And what is their status right now?
So I believe there have been 2 of those cases. There were probable cause determinations, and that means that there was probable cause of discrimination. And the rest of those cases have closed. And we could get other information to you if you have specific questions.
Just some context in terms of the complaints you received by people claiming discrimination based on gender identity versus other minority groups, how they compare, and whether you've seen an increase or decrease in complaints from transgender persons?
Thank you for that question. So about 1% to 2% of our cases come from folks who come to us with complaints and charges of discrimination on the basis of gender identity and also sexual orientation. So it's a small caseload, but that being said, we know that folks underreport the discrimination that they're experiencing, and we are committed at the department to ensuring that everyone can live a happy, successful, and thriving life free of discrimination. And so what we're doing here today in partnership with the Attorney General is a way that we can publicly say we stand with all Minnesotans and with the transgender community.
I just wanted to be sure, so when I use pictures of people in the room, none of the plaintiffs are in the room here, is that correct?
So the plaintiff in this case is the Minnesota Department of Human Rights.
Okay.
So the department is here. Ms. James obviously is the individual who's identified, and she's not here today.
Or any of the other 4? They're not in the room.
So those other individuals who had charges of discrimination against CSL Plasma were in earlier years, and that's not part of this case.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.